Even though I had just heard the actual words spoken, my mind was still trying to catch up. The way I can figure it, somehow Longbow had found out that Myron was cooking up some drugs here, busted down the door, a scuffle happened, and the young colt got shot. I managed to make my way in with Carlotta before she says he's the one who hired her to protect me. I've never heard of this moron, let alone understood why he cared about my well-being. But I intend to find out. I don't pay you to stand there. Why don't you kill the steel bitch already and hand me a health potion? Myron said as he winced from the bleeding wound. His words were filled with enough anger that it was worrisome. Carlotta was a Talon merc, and they had bad news if you were fighting them. Loyal to the contract holder until death, they would fight to their last without question, which meant she would kill him if he directly asked. Not even as the pony she was hired to protect, or as her friend. Could I even persuade her not to? That didn't matter to me. I still hadn't tried to stop her. I struggled to my hooves quickly and charged flat out at Longbow, catching her off guard as I threw my full, and considerable, weight against her, making her stumble sideways. While she was off balance, I reared up and swung my forehooves down on her back. She shifted slightly as she tried to recover, making me overshoot my left hoof strike, but I was surprised to find that the pip-buck's casting let out a resounding crack as it slammed down. My right hoof, however, slammed painfully against her armor, making me yell before I lost my balance and flopped onto her back. "Backlash, what are you doing?" Carlotta said through her bit as she tried to keep her battle saddles lined up. "Hear me out, Longbow," I said as the unicorn stabilized herself. "This isn't your mission." She glared at me over her shoulder, the fire in her eyes nearly consuming her, but I could tell she wasn't lost yet. "I may not be able to order you around, but Strawberry Sherbert said you needed to accompany me to the facility." I could see the fire in her eyes drain slowly as I spoke, my words clearly diffusing the rage that had swelled. "Listen to me. Let's say you arrest him. Are you going to wait for more rangers to show up, or are we abandoning the mission to take him back?" Her eyes went wide as she scrunched her muzzle up. "Well, we could—" "Before you suggest it," I cut her off as I pushed myself off of her, keeping my right hoof high as it stung. "We aren't taking him with us. My agreement wasn't to babysit some pony for you. He will just slow us down, and I won't be held responsible if he gets away." I looked back at Carlotta as she kept her guns trained on the blue mare, her rigid expression softening as I backed off. "You're not really a smart pony, are you?" Myron's voice stung deep in Longbow as I watched the fire in her vision flicker back to life. "You do realize I'm the pony keeping Carlotta from killing you, right? One word from me, and both of you are nothing but cool meat left out for the buzzards." He laughed lightly, trying to mask the pain he was in. Carlotta stiffened in shock before looking at Myron with her cold stare. "My contract states I was hired to protect Backlash. I would refuse." The pale stallion waved his hoof at her casually. Yeah, I know the rules. I swear, my brilliant intellect is overlooked by every pony I've ever had the unfortunate displeasure to meet." A grin slid across his muzzle slowly. "Besides, Mr. Backlash and I have some business to conduct." He pulled himself shakily to his hooves, glaring towards Longbow as he walked unsteadily towards Carlotta. "Now quit standing around and give me that Celestia damned health potion." "Sure thing, boss." She frowned and reached back into her saddlebags with a heavy sigh and pulled one of the jars of purple healing juices out. I'd always wondered why they were purple. I mean, why not red, or blue, or any other color for that matter? Flipping the cap off with a talon, she held it out to him. He bit down on the tip, chugging half the tonic down greedily, before he gasped for breath. The pale stallion turned to me as Carlotta grabbed the bottle from him, pouring the rest of it onto his bloody leg, letting the wound slowly knit itself closed. "Anyway, getting down to the matter at hand, I assume you have no idea who you are talking to," he said as he winced slightly, his voice containing just the tiniest traces of anxiety. "Or how I even know who you are." I nodded and glanced over at Longbow, as she huffed and sat down on a few empty boxes of cleaning supplies. Yeah, I'm one. You want to know why I have an interest in you? Yes, I'll get to that. Myron cut me off suddenly as he twitched and got to his hooves. He appeared edgy, but that's probably because he's an addict. I want us to be friends, and friends can discuss things in private. He shook a forehoof lazily at Carlotta as she spoke. Would you kindly escort our dear paladin out, Carlotta? Show her about the city for a bit. Tonight's a celebration. The three kings gave each other their workforces the next 2 days off to help keep them content amid the rising tensions. So relax, have fun, get laid. Keep her the hell away from us. I watched as the brown griffin nodded and walked over behind Longbow. The armored mare got to her hooves and rolled her eyes as she trudged through the trash outside, Carlotta doing her best to shut the cracked door on its splintering flame as she left. I raised my hoof slightly to speak, but the annoying runt was faster than I was again. Tell me, have you ever heard of the Meridino family? Being a fairly well-traveled merchant, you must have known that they had run the New Pegasus drug trade out west. He strode around the messy room as he spoke, his words filled with pride, but only inflected on have and had. The gears in my mind began to spin, letting me remember that they did indeed run the drug trade there. I tended to avoid any area they controlled because they charged a tariff on any trader not pushing their drugs. Wait, he's saying they did run it? As in, no longer. They don't run things anymore. I must have sounded stupid because he sighed and looked annoyed again. At least you're following me. Anyway, long story short, a month ago they happened to book a ride on the same train to Appaloosa that I had convinced a local arms dealer to schedule an explosive shipment on. Oh, and I may or may not have sent a message to one of my close friends in that backwater western town to tell some local loser druggie that if he took the repair handcar from Appaloosa Station and ran it as fast as he could down the track, he could time travel to the future. He shrugged to keep his giddy voice calm and his face straight as he talked. Man, this colt was fucking psychotic. Anyway, the train derailed on the cart and went boom. The whole arms cache went up. I wish I could have been there to see the crater that they said it made. But I've heard earlier on the radio that they just fixed the railway again. Anyway, now that I look over their operations in New Pegasus, I'm looking to expand east. And that's where you come in. I sat down hard and wide-eyed. Wow. So this kid is a whole new breed of fucked up. And the new head of the Las Pegasus drug trade? I'm surprised Longbow didn't just kill him on the spot. Yeah, I have that effect on ponies. He grinned as he sat in front of me. Are you going to ask why I need you? Or are you just going to get right down to business? I thought for a moment as the gears in my head locked up. Something didn't make sense. Who were you to the Merdinos? Why kill them? He stiffened up at the questions. I could see a tremor of rage ripple through his face for a moment. Who was I? I was the reason they were even in business. I was the one who refined the dash formula to be as potent as it was before the war. I was the one who mixed up the best batches ponykind has ever inhaled. Without me, those foals would still have been cooking up their toxic excuses for drugs. He heaved heavily as he belted out his explanation. I rubbed my hoof on my chin again in thought. I remembered the Merdino's main drug to push was dash, but I had a hard time believing that the colt sitting here before me had mixed up some sort of super potent batch. Skyline had once told me that the reason people manufactured some of the drugs nowadays was because they lost effectiveness over time, making the drugs had to be hard. Since when were drugs so easy to make that even a foal could do it? I can see you straining that diminutive intellect of yours, he said as he wiped his slight, sweaty brow with his hoof. Why not just ask your next uninteresting question? I stiffened up at his arrogance. Why don't you just tell me? That would be metagaming. He gasped as if he were appalled. The game master can't reveal anything unless the character asks. I stared and blinked in confusion. Okay, you lost me. He faced-toofed and shook his head. I swear, I'm the only intelligent and stallion enough to run a game of Wasteland in this shitty excuse for a country. My head started to hurt. For being as smart as he thought he was, he sure as hell was confusing. I'm not sure Pinkie Pie would even be able to follow that logic. So, this is all a game to you, I said slowly. No. Well, yes. He stuttered and scrunched up his muzzle with an angry look. It was just a reference, so shut your fat muzzle for a second. He reared up to stamp his hooves angrily on the floor. I tensed up without thinking and accidentally slipped into sats, the pink interface giving me an 86th chance to hit with my hooves. I contemplated on just pulling out Heartstopper and shooting the smug colt in the face a few times. I'm pretty sure that would help relieve some of the stress that's been building over the last few days. Alas, I just can't bring myself to kill a colt, no matter how twisted he seemed. It's just not the pony I am. Well, if anything, this would give me some time to deal with him not yelling at me. That reminds me of something the old man used to tell me. He said every pony had a moral center they personified and lived by. He called it a virtue. It always seemed like an odd idea. I mean, how could any pony be summed up in a single idea? I remember the stories he would tell about the ministry mares and how they each held an element of harmony. But they were special ponies. How could any pony in the desolate wastes personify something like laughter or generosity? I canceled sats and let out a sigh as Myron slammed down and glared angrily at me before pausing and studying my face. The way you shifted right there. Does that pip buck of yours work? He said as he trotted down and leaned over, looking at it. Fascinating. It's one of those models. I smiled and held the pink computer up. You've seen one before? Well, not this model. But one of the models made for Rainbow Dash, or so I'm told. It had some sort of experimental inventory system that used extremely precise teleportation spells to manipulate items. So precise it could even teleport combat stimulants and health potions directly into the bloodstream, he said as he grabbed the device from his hooves, twisting my leg uncomfortably as he looked it over. That one is closely guarded in Las Pegasus by those Enclave rejects that call themselves Dashites, or whatever. It was in a lot worse condition than this one, though. Fuck. I mean, Carlotta said that you found it, but I expected it to be useless. The mention of my griffin friend shot me back to the topic at hand. So, why did you send her to protect me? The pale stallion smiled as he let go of my pip buck and strode over to one of the machines with the dash vials inserted into it. Standing on his back legs, he hoofed a button on the face of the contraption and held out his other hoof under the vial. A small hiss emanated as the vial dropped from its mounting and into his waiting hoof. Because I need some pony to run my shipments from here to Manhattan, and I need that pony to meet 4 requirements. First of all, they have to have no affiliation with the Merdinos or any other suppliers in the region. He paused and slipped the inhaler head into the red cylinder before biting down on the tube and holding it in his mouth. He walked closer before he twisted his head and tossed the vial into my hooves. 2, they can't be addicts. Occasional use is fine, but I can't have them straight up using the shipment before it can even be distributed. He nodded towards the small red inhaler for me to pick it up. 3rd, I need them to be faster than the competition. When one of my informants got word that you had a pre-war working car, I knew you could complete runs in 1/10 the time as the other team. I picked up the tiny metal tube in my hoof, noting that the whole thing felt cold and heavier than it should for its size. So why not contract with Ditzy? Her Skycar... I looked back up at the short stallion with a confused look. He cut me off yet again. I was really getting tired of him doing that. That fucking zombie refused my offer. Flat out told me to buck off. I mean, who says that? Anyway, that brings me around to requirement 4. Loyalty. I need a pony who doesn't challenge my masterful plans and won't surprise me with a sudden but inevitable betrayal. He raised his hoof to his muzzle and poorly attempted to imitate shooting up the vial of dash. I need you to prove your loyalty. Use the dash, and I will administer a counteragent to keep you from being addicted. I dropped the vial on the ground at the suggestion. Fuck that! I don't do drugs unless it's absolutely necessary for survival. Least of all dash. I sat and crossed my hooves. I just couldn't do it. The problem was that a year or so after we started working in the field for the old man, Skyline and I had a close call with a gang outside of Baltimore. They came at me from all sides, but Sky swooped in to save the day like normal. Everything was going pretty smoothly. As she turned to a second pass, one of the gang's pistol rounds clipped my shoulder and I went down. I'd never seen her so angry, wiping out half the ponies within moments. She had thought that I died and threw herself onto them, causing the remaining members to scatter. When she came back to see me alive, I think that's what caused her addiction to start. She wouldn't listen to reason, and blamed herself for me getting shot. She was convinced she was too slow, and thought that dash would help her compensate. I didn't notice for a while, but the signs of an addict are pretty hard to miss. She would leave me in the middle of the night to fly off for hours when she thought I was asleep. One morning, while she was sleeping, I went through her saddlebags and found that she was carrying several of the empty red vials. I confronted her when she woke up, and we ended up arguing. But it wasn't until I took her remaining full vials did she break. She ended up trying to bite down on the bit of her saddle to kill me, forgetting that she hadn't put it on yet. I had watched as the revelation sunk deep, showing her just how far gone she was. The next few hours were filled with tears and telling me over and over that she was sorry. She told me that she wanted to stop, but didn't want to risk losing me in some gunfight. I destroyed the full vials after we had talked, but that's when things got pretty bad. The withdrawal hit her hard over the next following week, and she was nearly uncontrollable. It wasn't until I locked her in the generator room in the garage for a few days that she recovered enough to get her to Dr. Fitz for a proper detox. I swore to her and the old man that I would never fall to the temptation of any drug. Listen, moron. You can forget about me running your fucking shipments. I won't take your filth anywhere. I made my voice as stern as I could. Fuck this Colt and his shit. I didn't want to lose Carlotta, but I won't fucking sacrifice my morals to appease any pony. The young stallion frowned and shifted on his hooves. You might not want to do that. I mean, I'm well informed from all around the wastes, and it wouldn't take very many caps to get ponies to come out of the ruins for miles around to kill you and that sister of yours. Fuck. 2 times in one day, I've had someone attempt to threaten me like this. I mean, it wasn't new to threaten the use of bounty hunters personally against Sky and I. But I couldn't just gun Myron down. For the bargain price of 5,000 caps, he could get every hired gun out here to bear down on us in just a few days. And with how fast his information network seemed to run, I know that even if we ran, we probably would never be safe. Tick-tock. I got shit to do, jackass. Make up your decision. He smiled his evil little smile as he determined a look bore into my head. I don't think I really have any other choice at the moment. I still had to go and fix the stupid terminal near Philadelphia, and somehow find the mirror pond before 42 did. I'll have to fucking agree, and figure out some way in the near future to sort all this out, while still some way keeping this all from Sky. Fine, I said, as I picked the vial up again, holding it in my hoof near my muzzle. Myron's smile grew wider than I thought possible. So you finally came around, huh? I knew you would, the smug stallion stated. Fuck that. It's my turn to interrupt. But only on one condition. My voice boomed over his, causing him to lock up momentarily. Oh, Celestia, it was worth it just to see the look on his face. You will postpone starting my runs until I can sort out the jobs I already have. My ability to run your shit will do you no good if everybody thinks I don't hold up my word." He looked down for a moment and clenched his jaw. "I'll agree to postpone starting the shipments." I grunted with a nod. "Then He cut me off with his own raised voice. "But I have my own conditions." "The fucking hell, Celestia! Just give me the strength to kill him. Please. I ask you for nothing else." I thought as I struggled to contain my anger, looking into his green eyes and trying to melt his brain with my condensed hatred. In waiting so long, my competitors will have a leg up on me. If you want the extra time, I'll need you to disrupt their operations. I would arrange it myself, but as you see, I have a bit of a staffing problem at the moment. Kill one of the 3 kings, and we have a deal. I didn't like this one bit. My body ached and told me to rest, all as the bruises and strained muscles struggled to keep me standing. My brain hammered at my skull for sleep, as my conscience screamed to just walk away. I leaned forward and went to use the drug before Myron slipped it out of my grip. "Hold on. I have a brilliant idea. I want to see if your Pip-Buck has the same ability as Rainbow Dash's supposedly did." He picked up the vial and tossed it into one of my saddlebags. "Okay, now remember, once it wears off in a few minutes, you need to sleep. You've got a big day ahead of you, and I need you at the top of your game. Come see me in the morning, and I'll administer the antidote." "How do I know it'll even work?" I said uneasily, as I eyed the red tube. "Because I fucking designed it to work. I lost a good lot of slaves testing the various formulas. But I did everything, and eventually got the chemical balance that didn't cause heart failure. In any case, your tiny brain will have to just trust that my superior intellect will have gotten this dose correct as well." He calmly spoke through a wide smile. I cringed as he spoke the word trust, making my mind shoot back to the thought about the ministry mares. Applejack had been the bearer of the element of honesty, and was known throughout the old Equestria for never letting any pony down. Oh, how I prayed that she would come back to life and buck Myron back into the deceitful shadows that he crawled from. Although as much as I wanted to, a boulder would never turn into a pile of caps, and I'd have to get on with the real life here in the wastes. I slid into Sats with relative ease, detecting the targeting system and bringing up the inventory. I paused as I looked over the weapons tab, glancing at the only 2 guns I had. I sadly passed on them as I looked through the other tabs before finally reading the bright pink 4-letter name that floated into my vision. I selected it, praying to Luna from the back of my mind that this model didn't have the same functionality. I was distressed to see the option to use pop up quickly. Of course I knew it had to be able to do it. Why would the spell only be limited to equipping weapons? Whatever. No going back now. My thoughts commanded the system to use the vial, and the item popped off the inventory screen as I felt a sharp sensation in my chest. A small notification appeared in the top right corner of my vision, stating that I had used the drug. I closed my inventory with another thought, and the spell switched back to the targeting screen, resisting the thought to buck the smug stallion in front of me in the muzzle. I deactivated Sats and watched the pink outline disappear, waiting for normal time to resume as it always had, only it was taking much longer than usual. Fuck. I knew that Dash made ponies act quicker than normal, but I'd never considered that the actual perceived time was moving slower, which fucking meant that I was perceiving leaving the slowness of Sats at an even slower rate. Other than the perceived boredom of waiting for time to reorient itself, I felt good. My weak muscles were solid under me. I could feel exactly how I was standing, even the slightest shift in weight, and I could feel the muscles stretch and tug. As time resumed to about a quarter of its normal speed, it stopped accelerating. I looked up to see Myron tossing a coffee mug towards me. The smooth white cup was rotating slowly through the air as I watched it. I easily stepped aside as it flung past my muzzle, making me smile. I feel great, and I'm fast. Great Celestia's tiara, this drug is fucking awesome! I am untouchable with this shit! I turned and trotted my way to the door, watching in amazement as I hoofed it open, disrupting the bright dust motes that floated in the artificial light casting down from outside. I gasped slowly as I watched the fluffy particles dance through the air, being drawn around by the subtle air current. The bright light started to sting my eyes as I looked around, reaching my hoof up to shield myself from the light. Okay, so downside 1, lights get to be annoying. I can't do anything about that. Or can I? I'm untouchable because this drug makes me move fast, right? Well, I bet I can even outrun the light. I'm such a smart pony. As I took off towards the corner, I beamed a smile over at Ripcord as he sat in his office. The yellow Pegasus was slowly looking up over a book that he was reading as I observed him blow a ring of smoke from his muzzle. The wispy smoke dissipated into nothingness before he took another drag of his cigarette. As I got to the edge of the motel building, I sprung forward, galloping down the street as fast as I could. I squinted in the near-blinding light, not disheartened in the least. I couldn't escape its encompassing rays. How could I waste the time to feel bad when everything felt so good? The street party was still in full swing as I heard the slow beat of a set of bongo drums playing alongside the notes of a fiddle emanating from the center of town. I wasn't sure where I was going to run, or how long this would last, but I wanted to make the most of it while I could. I spotted odd, inky forms floating under every pony as they danced, padding from the bright light close to the ground. I took off towards the weird shapes, realizing that as I approached them, I was watching the shadows of every pony's form and shift as they danced. Huzzah! I had found refuge from the evil light. I beamed a smile as I twisted and wound my way under the crowd, looking around as I slid through the shadows of the assorted ponies. I stopped as I found myself near the bonfire that had been started not long before we had arrived. The ribbons of flames looked almost alive as they waved in the wind like the blades of grass from my dreams. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine it. The soft dirt and warm breeze against my coat, the warmth of the sun that shone down in all of Celestia's brilliance. I opened my eyes again as I looked up, hoping to see the blue skies and balloon-shaped clouds. I was instead met with the ridiculously bright lights on the tower next to me, causing me to turn and rub my eyes with a forehoof, after the glare take forever to fade. As I regained most of my vision, I walked up the road to the bridge, following as I saw a red Pegasus swing down into the Red Lantern's parking lot. That's odd. Sky wasn't supposed to meet us here. Why would she be showing up now? I tucked that thought away and took off through the cloud cover again, deftly making my way between the celebrating ponies to go talk to her. Time shifted slowly again as the drug started to wear off, speeding up at a gradual pace. By the time I reached the parking lot, I was pretty much going at a normal pace, an interesting rate. Again. I walked around the corner, as I thought to myself that Dash could be the edge I would need to fight 42 and win. Hell, it could help out in a number of combat situations. I needed more Dash. Skyline smiled as she pulled off the tight hug Ripcord gave her, turning to me before looking down at my bandaged chest, her eyes softening a bit. You okay there, Backlash? She walked up slowly and put her hoof on my shoulder. Do you want me to take a look at it? I yawned heavily, my legs wobbling a bit, making me sit for a moment before getting back to my hooves. No, I'll be fine. I'm just kind of exhausted. As I spoke, her expression shifted from one of curiosity, leaning in close and looking into my eyes. Did you take a Med-X for it or something? Your pupils are dilated. Her voice held more than just a curious note now, but my brain refused to try and figure out why. I guess with being so tired, I was just losing focus. It had been a long day, and I was looking forward to a good amount of sleep. I yawned again, this time losing my balance and falling sideways. Sky stepped forward, and I barely caught myself. No, I didn't, and I'm fine. I just need to go to bed. I grumbled out the words as I stumbled towards the room we rented, making it all of 5 feet before I tripped on my bad hoof and fell on my face. My still sore chest was throbbing in pain as I struggled to get back up. As I did, I was interrupted by Sky as she pressed herself against me so I could lean on her, helping me walk to the room. I know you're lying to me, Backlash. Both as tired as you seem, the truth can wait until morning." I heard her say fuzzily as Ripcord opened our door for us, once again letting me view the most beautiful sight in all of Equestria. The single, lusciously soft, queen-sized mattress that I had spent many a night on before. I could hear it calling to me, beckoning me to just grab hold of its amazing softness, and never leave. I reached out for it with both hooves, frowning as the bed seemed to fly away from my vision. Oh wait, that's because without my front hooves on the floor, gravity could take over and help welcome me to the amazing world of sleep.